Jermain Franklin may be Moses Itauma's toughest puzzle yet. Durable, clever, and proven against Dillian White and Anthony Joshua. If Franklin rediscovers his best form, this matchup becomes more than a showcase. It becomes a dangerous test of Moses Itauma's aura. Let's talk about it. Is Jermain Franklin the hidden trap? Is he the fatal flaw? Is he the fatal flaw? Or is he the heavyweight puzzle to Moses Itauma? Are we overlooking the danger of Jermain Franklin? Or is this just simply great matchmaking? To explore this further, let's look at the chronology. Let's look at the CV. The CV always tells a story. All boxers have a CV, figuratively speaking. A CV can paint a picture of a person's true identity. So let's start with the amateur context. Franklin had an amateur career from 2010 to 2015. In that career, he won several Michigan regional titles. So what was he known for? What was Franklin known for? He was known for his high punch output, good hooks, good body work, and durable chin. So to conclude the amateur context, Franklin had a respectable amateur career. Okay, so now let's address the professional context. And this is where it gets a bit more elaborate. So in April 2015, Franklin turns professional with a first round knockout. Great beginning, great start. And this makes him a young prospect. And then we have a timeline from 2015 to 2019, and that's significant. Why is it significant? Because Franklin at this time compiles a record of 18 wins and 0 losses by 2019. So at this point, you could kind of make the statement that Franklin is gaining modest recognition in America. He's gaining modest recognition in America, and he's in those heavyweight discussions. He is gaining momentum. And in November the 7th, 2020, Franklin gets another popularity boost as he beats Rydell Booker in 10 rounds. Why did he get a credibility boost? Because Booker had some credibility. He had some names on the CV. He went the distance with Kubrat Purovac and James Toney. And Franklin dominated that fight. He controlled the distance. Had a good jab, had a higher work rate, and also illustrated a decent boxing IQ. And this set up effectively the showdown with Dillian White on November the 26th, 2022. Now, White had credibility. Let's go into that credibility. He had that competitive fight with Anthony Joshua. In the second round, he nearly knocked Anthony Joshua down. At the very least, he hurt Anthony Joshua, and it was a competitive fight. He also had wins over Povetkin, who was a former champion, and he had wins over Lucas Brown and Joseph Parker. So when you look at Dillian White, the credibility was definitely there. He had fought at a high level for a significant period of time. So this, in my opinion, was Franklin's best performance, and we will explore that in the next section. In short, to summarize in short, he outworked White at times. He showed durability, and he showed boxing IQ, and he showed courage. And this fight made Franklin internationally recognizable. So this fight, and when I say this fight, I mean the fight with Dillian White, this raised Franklin's stock considerably. It raised his stock considerably. And then on April the 1st, 2023, he fought Anthony Joshua. And Franklin went the distance. And in going the distance, he showed durability. He showed some really good counters as well. Now that night, if we're honest, he fought a more defensive-minded Anthony Joshua. He didn't fight the AJ that fought Charles Martin, Povetkin, or Vladimir Klitschko. I feel like the AJ that fought Vladimir Klitschko was very special, very courageous, technical, but also very courageous, rolling the dice, very offensive-minded. This was a very different Anthony Joshua. Now, this fight gave Franklin a massive global exposure. It kind of put him in the algorithm. He had now been exposed to the British public and the British boxing algorithm. So he had been exposed. Franklin had been exposed to the British public and the British boxing algorithm. And you could look at this performance from different angles. On one angle, you can say, well, Franklin was too defensive-minded and he didn't take too many chances. But from another angle, you can say, well, he went the distance with a former two-time heavyweight champion. And then after this, on September the 13th, I can't remember the year, but Franklin then beats Ivan Dychko. Apologies if the pronunciation is wrong there. And Dychko Ivan had, he was a two-time bronze medalist. So that victory over Ivan, that restored some credibility on the comeback trail, because obviously he had the great performance against Dillian Whyte. He had the performance against Anthony Joshua, which is more subjective, but then he's on the comeback trail, and his most significant victory was over Ivan on the comeback trail. However, his most significant performances were against Whyte and were against Anthony Joshua. Against Dillian Whyte, Franklin was courageous and he showed a high boxing IQ. Against AJ, Franklin was technically sound, but again, the question is, it's really a statement. I mean, the question would be, did he take enough chances or did he take enough risks? And the statement would be, no, he didn't take enough risks in that fight. So to end this part, the CV, when we review the CV shows clear potential. There are clear signs that Franklin could operate at a high level, clear signs that he can operate at a high level, but there are also signs that he may fall short of that high level. In short, to be concise, Franklin is dangerous, but he's dangerous only if he is optimal. So before we address how Franklin could beat Moses Itauma, theoretically, let's address his best performance. As stated previously, in 2022, on November the 26th, Franklin got a massive opportunity against Dillian Whyte. And the fight was held at Wembley Arena, which has like a 12,000 seating capacity. So this was a really great opportunity for Franklin. Now, Dillian Whyte was known for his body punching and his deadly counter left hook. He had a really high level, elite level counter left hook. For example, against Lucas Brown, that left hook knockout was absolutely vicious. I think it was in the 6th round. And against Joseph Parker, he had, I think it was 2 knockdowns, again with that left hook. I think it was on the counter. And against Derek Chisora, in the rematch, he knocked out Derek Chisora with a left hook. And just a side note, those Derek Chisora fights, they were absolutely epic. Great marketing and even greater fights. So another thing that was underestimated about Dillian Whyte, is that he had good boxing intelligence. Now, in this fight with the marketing, the face-off was quite fierce. Dillian Whyte tells Franklin to relax in a fairly intense verbal exchange. Now, Dillian Whyte is good at marketing and he played the appropriate moves. Now, the context here is interesting because Dillian Whyte had everything to lose and was trying to rebuild his career. Franklin had everything to gain, and that context is extremely dangerous. And on a side note, the black and white filming of the face-off made the visuals look really raw. I think they should return to that. Anyway, so let's paint a picture and talk about the fight between Franklin and Dillian Whyte. Let's paint that picture. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go over some notes of the fight. So in round one, Franklin shows a good jab, and he particularly shows a sharp jab to the body, and he's also got really good movement. Franklin also shows a nice double left hook. I really like that left hook, and I like the fact that he's doubling it, and he's throwing it nice and short. At the end of the round, Franklin attempts some counter right hands. So he likes the right hand counter. Now, when I think of right hand counters, I think of elite fighters like Evander Holyfield and James Toney. So in this round, Franklin is showing some good pedigree and good boxing intelligence. Now let's fast forward to round 5. And in round 5, Dillian Whyte makes an adjustment. He's closing the range and he's throwing those hooks to the body. So at this point, Dillian Whyte is making a conscious effort to raise the tempo. He's making a conscious effort to raise the tempo. He's also throwing a left hook to the temple. Now the left hook to the temple, this is a punch that Golovkin used to throw. And I'm assuming this was thrown, or this was instructed under the guidance of Abel Sanchez. And I'm assuming that Dillian Whyte attempting to throw this punch is under Buddy McGirt's guidance. And Buddy McGirt obviously is a trainer that has high credibility and is well respected in boxing circles. Now, Dillian Whyte is bringing the heat. He's really upping the tempo. He's going to the body with hard shots, and now he's trying to throw combinations. But Franklin did not crumble. This shows psychological strength. Now Franklin is landing the jab as Dillian gets in range. So he's not panicking, he's using the jab. This is a key tactical distinction. And this allows Franklin to get off the backhand to the body, which clearly gets Dillian Whyte's attention. Dillian Whyte is unleashing to the body, but Franklin is responding with powerful combinations, getting Dillian Whyte's respect. So now we're in round 6, and Dillian Whyte is still staying in range, and this allows Franklin to get off that short left hook and get off more powerful punches. Franklin is still using that jab to the body. He's still using that jab to the body, and I believe that's a real effective investment. Now Dillian Whyte is still trying to up the pace. He's still trying to dominate, but Franklin is responding, and this is the appropriate thing to do. Dillian Whyte, in fairness, is throwing intelligent combinations, and he's still trying that left hook to the temple, but Franklin responds and he gets his respect. And I think that's the important thing here, that Franklin is getting Dillian Whyte's respect. Now let's fast forward to round 9, and this is where Franklin sets an effective trap. Because he's focusing on the body. I think he throws like a jab to the body, maybe a hook to the body, which then sets up the powerful overhand right to the head. And this has an impact. Dillian Whyte gets pushed back to the ropes, and in this moment Franklin gets a dominant position. And this is important because Franklin is maintaining his boxing IQ. Even in the later rounds. And then in the 12th round, Whyte, as I've stated, has good boxing IQ and he's a strong, fierce competitor. He gets momentum with the hooks at the end, and Franklin is still brave and is still firing back. However, Dillian does start to assert domination, and at the very end he finds some very hurtful punches, but again Franklin shows some tremendous heart. So to conclude this part, Franklin shows punch creativity, he shows durability, he shows heart, and he was able to compete. with Dillian Whyte's boxing IQ. He showed significant toughness. And even though Dillian Whyte got the decision, some people felt that Franklin had done enough. And I think this version of Franklin could give Moses Itauma some serious problems. So how could Franklin beat Moses Itauma? How could he beat Moses Itauma? Now this is how Franklin could win the fight. First, the premise here is that he needs to be in elite condition. So the context needs to be a great camp, a great team, great confidence, and an absolutely spot-on game plan. So that needs to be the premise. And Franklin would need to compete and win the jab battle. He needs to compete and win the jab battle. Now, when I think of jab battles, immediately I go to the Lennox Lewis versus Frank Bruno fight. And Frank Bruno was loved. He was absolutely loved by the British public. And he was the underdog against Lennox Lewis. And Lewis had an amazing jab. But Frank Bruno was able to compete with Lewis's jab in their fight. And this set up his backhand on multiple occasions. So the reason why I bring that up is, even though Lewis had a great jab, for Frank Bruno to have success, he had to compete with the jab. And I think Franklin needs to do the same. He needs to compete with Moses Itauma's jab, and he would need to nullify Moses Itauma's southpaw jab. Remember, the jab from Moses Itauma is coming from the southpaw position, and he would need to counter effectively. So I would say he needs to counter Moses' right hook, which comes from the southpaw position, preferably with the left hook. So he needs to do like a catch and counter for, I would say he needs to counter Moses' right hook with his left hook, but in dealing with Moses Itauma's backhand, he'll probably need to do an effective catch and counter from the right angle. And also, and Franklin has showed this before, he needs that jab to the body and chest. That would be a really good investment because he has a really good jab to the body. And he needs to feint before he throws this to reduce the possibility of being countered. Now, the context here is that there was rumors that Moses Itauma had a bicep injury. So from the southpaw position, if you think of him from the southpaw position, the bicep is right there. So you would think that the jab to the right bicep or to the right arm could be effective. And this would need to be done behind a feint, because when you feint, it makes it harder for your opponent to read your moves. Now, I'm assuming at the beginning, Franklin will be doing a lot of movement, but there's going to come a time, there could come a time where there's mid-range exchanges. And I think Franklin would need to show the same fire and ambition that he showed against Dillian White by throwing hard punch combinations from the mid-range. And also what he needs to do, he needs to show that same punch creativity, but he also needs to shut down Moses Itauma's rhythm. So he needs to frustrate him. A way you can frustrate him is to take away the jab, use the holding from a dominant position, make him miss. And additional to this, he needs to set counter traps. That should be a part of his boxing IQ, and just give Moses Itauma different looks. Give him different looks. He may have seen these looks in sparring, but give him different looks to what he's experienced within a professional context. If Moses Itauma punches in phases like he did against Dillian White, Franklin needs to obviously defend effectively, but he needs to respond accordingly to try and assert his dominance. And if Franklin can take this fight into the middle rounds, he needs to invest in the body, he needs to set counter traps, take away Moses Itauma's short right hook, take away that backhand, and then he will have a serious chance. Now remember, all this is easier said than done. And Franklin will know this. And let's give the correct context here. No one at this point has been able to deal with Moses Itauma's speed and Moses Itauma's power. But Franklin, I feel, needs to get through the early rounds unscathed, and he does have the boxing IQ to do it. And he needs to give Moses Itauma things to worry about. So like I said, he's got the boxing IQ to get through the early rounds and to be competitive. But the question is, has he got the desire? Has he got that fire, which he seemed to have against Dillian White? Now remember, in big fights, there are always big questions. In big fights, there are always big questions. For example, when Evander Holyfield fought Riddick Bowe in the rematch, I was questioning, could Evander adapt? Or people were questioning, could Evander adapt? Could he win the jab battle? Could he gain a dominant position? And could he win the fight? When Sugar Ray Leonard fought Marvin Hagler, there were questions. Could Sugar Ray Leonard, a great fighter, an elite fighter, could he deal with the extreme front foot pressure? Could he deal with the extreme front foot pressure and the southpaw style? And when Carl Froch fought Lucien Bute, I remember thinking, will Froch be able to handle the southpaw jab? But could Bute withstand Froch's power? Because Froch has a lot of power. He has elite power. What's the point that I'm making? The point is that matches create questions, and those questions, they create intrigue. Those questions create intrigue. So with that being said, what are the questions in this fight? Because there are many questions. For example, can he take away the southpaw jab? Can Franklin implement his own jab? Can Franklin win the hook battle? Can Franklin take away Moses Itauma's backhand? And will Franklin's boxing IQ, will his boxing IQ create issues? Can Franklin's boxing creativity cause problems? Does Franklin have the power to hurt Moses Itauma? That's a very important question. And will we see the real Jermain Franklin? Who is the real Jermain Franklin? Is it the risk taker that fought Dillian White? Or is it the defensive-minded version that fought Anthony Joshua? Can Franklin, can he really take Moses Itauma into deep waters? So there are so many questions to ponder. And maybe, just maybe, the weigh-in might give us an indication about his condition. The weigh-in may give us an indication about his ambition. Now, with all that being said, this is a massive opportunity. This is a massive opportunity for Jermain Franklin. A win would open many doors of economic virtue, of economic value. Now, Teddy Atlas is a man of fantastic boxing knowledge. I believe he calls the ring the chamber of truth, and the truth will reveal itself on fight night. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. What does that mean? It means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, all you have to do is simply like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content, then click either here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much, much appreciated. Peace.